My family is very close. We try to go on vacation together at least 2 to 3 times a year. If someone can't join us, we always bring them a souvenir. My name is Jenny, I'm 27 years old, and I live with my family. My dad is often busy with work, and my sister is married and lives on her own, so usually, it's just my mom and my grandfather at home. Lately, though, something seems off about my sister. Even when she visits, she looks sad. I asked her, "What's wrong, sis? You seem different lately." She replied, "I'm fine, really," but I noticed she hadn't smiled in a while. I wondered if something was wrong with her in-laws. She quickly got defensive and said, "No, everything is fine. Stop saying strange things." Then she lost her temper and left for her in-laws' house. She didn't seem happy about it. A few days later, my sister came back, looking very scared. I asked her, "What's wrong? You look terrified." She said, "I'm not terrified," but I could see she was shaking. "What happened?" I pressed her. She replied, "Oh, it's just a bit cold." I was really worried about her. Soon after, my sister's husband, Sean, came to our house. He seemed relieved to see her. "So, you're here. We were worried," he said. "Sorry for the trouble." She got a little homesick. "Let's go home." Rachel, my sister, left with him, but she looked desperate. I asked my mom, "Don't you think something is wrong with my sister?" Mom agreed, saying she noticed how scared Rachel looked when Sean arrived. We both worried that Rachel might be mistreated at her in-laws' house. One day, I decided to visit my sister's in-laws. Her mother-in-law, Layla, welcomed me at the door and said, "Oh my, it's been a while. Jenny, what brings you here?" I told her, "My sister has been acting strange, and I wanted to see if everything is okay." Layla replied, "Everything is fine here. There's nothing unusual." As we talked at the door, I heard a loud noise from inside the house. I asked, "What's happening? What's that noise?" Layla just said, "I don't know. I'm busy today. You should go home." I wanted to go inside, but she wouldn't let me. I tried to check on my sister, but I ended up being turned away. A few days later, something shocking happened. My sister came back home crying. "What's wrong, sis? Are you okay? What happened?" I asked my sister as she cried. She couldn't tell me what was wrong, and when I looked closely, I noticed bruises on her body. It seemed like Layla and Sean had hurt her. "This is awful. How could they do this?" I held my sister tightly, both of us crying together, but there was something even more troubling on her mind. "The baby, our baby," she said. My sister already had a child, but the baby was still very young and couldn't take care of himself. I noticed she hadn't brought the baby with her. "Where's the baby? What happened?" I asked. Through her tears, she replied, "They hurt our baby." "What do you mean they hurt him? What did they do?" I pressed her. I've been putting up with Sean's abuse and my mother-in-law's unreasonable behavior for so long, but when I finally fought back, they threatened the baby. "That's horrible," I exclaimed. She had been enduring so much just to protect the baby, but then her voice trembled, and she couldn't speak anymore. At that moment, our grandfather arrived. "What's going on? What happened?" he asked. My sister, still crying, explained everything to him. After hearing the story, Grandpa said only, "Huh." Then, he picked up the phone. "Who are you calling?" I asked, but he didn't answer. He just said, "We're going to their house." So, he took Mom, my sister, and me in the car and drove us to Layla and Sean's home. About 10 minutes later, we arrived. Layla greeted us and said, "What a surprise to see the whole family here." She acted like she didn't know anything was wrong. "I heard that you hurt my granddaughter and my great-grandchild," Grandpa said quietly. Layla just laughed and replied, "Who cares? It's not a big deal. It's all her fault anyway." She pointed at my sister. I was confused about what my sister could be blamed for. Layla said my sister had told Sean to eat less sausage because it wasn't healthy, but he ate it every day. "What's wrong with letting him eat what he likes?" my sister asked. "And you hurt my granddaughter over that?" Grandpa asked, upset. Layla dismissed it, saying, "You're making a fuss over nothing. It's ridiculous for you to come all the way here with your whole family. Are you all fools?" She laughed, showing no shame. Grandpa was quiet, but I could see he was really angry from the lines on his forehead. Just then, Sean, my sister's husband, showed up. "Hey, Rachel, you're finally back. Did you go to your parents again? I was worried about you," he said, but he didn't seem worried at all. "Why is the whole family here?" he asked. Grandpa replied, "We're here to take you down." "Take down? What's this old man talking about?" Sean replied, looking confused. Layla and Sean laughed, but then Grandpa started to laugh, too. What are you laughing at? Sean asked angrily. Grandpa said, I was just thinking about what's going to happen to you soon. They should arrive any minute now. What are you talking about? Sean questioned. Just then, one car after another began to pull up and park in front of Layla and Sean's house. What's happening? I wondered aloud as people started getting out of the cars. Soon, a crowd surrounded the house. There must have been about 30 people. I recognized many of them. They were all my relatives. What on earth? Who are all these people? Why are so many here? I asked in shock. They're my family, Grandpa said. They heard my precious granddaughter had been mistreated and wanted to step in. Sean complained, you're crowding in front of our house like this. You're being a nuisance. Well then, let's go inside, Grandpa said. He led our relatives into the house, and despite Sean's protests, we followed him inside. In the living room, I saw my sister's baby crying. Oh no, his face is all swollen. My sister cried as she quickly picked him up. I was terrified to think they had been hurting the baby while my sister was away. Did you really hurt such a small child? I asked, concerned. Sean and Layla replied, that's not it. This was unavoidable. We didn't want to do this. Layla explained, the baby wouldn't stop crying, so we had no choice but to hit him. You don't hit a child just because they won't stop crying, I said, feeling furious. Layla and Sean were not thinking clearly. I can't forgive this. How dare you do this to my family? Some of our relatives are police officers, and we can report you for assault. Grandpa was angry as he spoke. Wait, you have police officers? But isn't this a civil matter? Sean asked, trying to defend himself. Not necessarily. If there's evidence of assault, it can become a police matter, Grandpa replied. He checked with our relatives, and they agreed. After what they did to my sister and the baby, I won't be satisfied until they're taken away by the police. But Layla and Sean kept making weak excuses. There's no need to push this hard. We just need to make sure this doesn't happen again, Layla said, her voice shaking. It seemed she realized how serious this was. Rachel, say something, Sean pleaded. We didn't do anything wrong, did we? It was just a little rough handling. My sister stayed quiet and looked down. Hey, say something, Rachel, we're married, right? Help me out here, Sean yelled. Grandpa stepped in front of my sister, angry. How dare you talk to my granddaughter like that? He shouted. Sean tried to argue, but Grandpa stood his ground. Enough is enough. By your logic, no matter how much you hurt Rachel, we can't intervene because we're not family. How can we just stand by? Grandpa's rage was strong, and Sean looked scared and started to cry. Wait just a minute, you barged into our house. Isn't that trespassing? If I call the police, won't you get arrested? Sean shouted. We're willing to face any punishment for that, Grandpa said firmly, but you need to understand that what you're doing is much worse than trespassing. Wait, what are you saying? Layla started to cry. Suddenly, Layla charged into the crowd of relatives. What do you think you're doing? She shouted. As Grandpa tried to stop her, Layla lunged at my sister. What were you thinking? Calling all these people? You're causing us problems. Go home now. Layla shook my sister by the shoulders. Fix this right now. Stop it. Let go, my sister cried. Grandpa pulled Layla away forcefully. Wow, throwing a fragile woman like that? How cruel. Layla tried to provoke him, but Grandpa didn't back down. The problem is you attacking Rachel just now. It's not my fault. We were living peacefully, and then this happens because of her, Layla exclaimed. You might have been living in peace, but Rachel wasn't. It seems you've been very cruel to her, even to your own grandchild. How can you be so shameless? Grandpa said. I'm not being shameless, I'm just stating the facts, Layla argued. Rachel, say something. You've been silent this whole time. This is all your fault, Layla shouted at my sister. Finally, my sister looked up and spoke. Mother-in-law, I don't want to live in this house anymore. What are you talking about? Layla replied, confused. You and Sean have always treated me terribly. I never thought my marriage would be like this. I want a divorce. A divorce? Layla exclaimed in shock. My sister must have been holding back her feelings for a long time to protect her child, but with the support of Grandpa and Mom, she found the courage to declare her decision with determination in her eyes. Don't joke around. I'll never agree to a divorce. You're going to live as my servant forever, Sean yelled back. No way, I'm not your tool, and I won't let you control me, my sister shot back. Grandpa was impressed by her strong stance. You're definitely my granddaughter. When you decide to act, You really act, he said. This isn't the time for this conversation. I won't allow a divorce. I need a servant too. If you're saying you'll divorce, then you need to pay Sean compensation. Why would I owe any compensation? My sister asked, confused. Of course you owe us. You've been a pain in the neck for Sean all this while. You owe us a few $1,000,000 in damages, Layla said. Hold on, that's out of line. Grandpa jumped back into the conversation. You've been the problem. You've treated Rachel and my great-granddaughter horribly. You should be the ones paying damages in the divorce. What? There's no way we're paying that. Besides, we don't have that kind of money, Sean protested. I won't accept any excuses. You'll pay, even in installments. We have lawyers in the family, so don't think you can just run away, Grandpa insisted. What? You even have lawyers? Sean sounded worried. Mom, what are we going to do? Should we apologize? Layla asked. What are you talking about? We don't even know if an apology will be accepted, my mom replied. But if the company finds out we're getting divorced, it will become awkward at work, Layla worried. Work? Grandpa seemed to remember something when he heard that. Come to think of it, I think I've heard of Rachel's husband's company somewhere. I remember now. Do you work for the company run by my relatives? What? You have relatives there too? Layla asked, shocked. There are plenty of punishments waiting for you, but trespassing isn't the worst of your crimes, Grandpa said. We'll need to address that first. Fired? Not just divorced, but fired? Don't joke around. I absolutely won't allow that, Sean shouted. Do you think saying you don't want to get fired will let you off the hook? Reflect on what you've done, Grandpa said firmly. Mom, do something. I'm going to get fired, Sean cried out. You people, this is outrageous. It's unfair to pile all this on us, Layla complained. Who was the one doing outrageous things first? I've only been protecting my adorable granddaughter. Grandpa's eyes were stern as he glared at Layla and Sean. They looked so frightened they couldn't even respond. Let's end this conversation here. Rachel, you can rest easy. Our relatives will handle the rest. Thank you, Grandpa, my sister said as they were leaving her in-laws' house. But Layla and Sean started crying out in despair. Wait, we were wrong. Please don't go through with the divorce. I'm begging you, Sean shouted desperately. But my sister didn't look back. She got into Grandpa's car, and they drove away. You should give up. Everything that's happened is your own doing, Layla yelled after them. Why did this have to happen? It's all Mom's fault, Sean complained. I'm not the one at fault here. You are, my mom shot back. Sean and Layla continued arguing until they were out of sight. We went home after that, leaving the legal matters to our family lawyer, the police, and the owner of Sean's company. In the end, my sister was able to divorce Sean and even got a settlement. Sean was fired from his job and had a hard time finding a new one. Finally, my sister was free, and she couldn't help but cry tears of joy. A while later, we noticed Sean hanging around our house. He seemed to want to reconcile with my sister, but she had no intention of that happening. The moment Grandpa saw Sean, he was furious. He immediately called our family member who was a police officer and had Sean arrested for stalking. After that, a restraining order was placed on Sean, and he stopped coming around our house. Finally, peace returned to our home. My sister said she plans to raise her baby with the support of our family for a while. I also help take care of the baby, and we enjoy our life together as a wonderful family.
Hi, I'm Sandra. Growing up in a family where the scales always seemed tipped was never easy. My brother David was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Then there was me, always in the background, the afterthought. I met Liam 2 years ago at a friend's art exhibit. He was different, kind, attentive, and incredibly supportive. We connected instantly, bonding over our love for indie films and old books. When he proposed last spring under the blooming cherry blossoms at our favorite park, I said yes without a second thought. We were thrilled, dreaming of a small but beautiful wedding. I even had a wedding fund my parents had promised me, just like they had given David 3 times over. But everything started to fall apart one Sunday afternoon during a family dinner. David announced his 3rd engagement, and the room filled with congratulations and toasts while I sat there, a fake smile plastered on my face. Later, when I casually mentioned my wedding plans to my parents, the room went silent. You know, Sandra, we had to use some of your wedding fund for David's ceremony, my dad said, not meeting my eyes. He needed it more, you understand, right? I felt as though I'd been punched in the gut. Use some of it? What does that mean? I managed to ask. My mom's voice was unusually sharp as she added, "Well, it's all gone. We thought you'd take longer to find someone, given your history. David needed it." Just like that, it was gone. I could barely keep the tremor out of my voice. You promised that the money was for my wedding. How could you decide on your own to give it all to David? It was necessary, Sandra. Your brother has gone through a lot with his divorces. He needed a fresh start, a proper wedding to set things right. My dad explained, as if it made perfect sense to erase my dreams for David yet again. And what about me? Don't I deserve a fresh start too? I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I've been planning and saving with Liam, counting on that fund. My mom's response was cold, dismissive. You should have been more proactive about your relationships, Sandra. We made a decision based on necessity. I left the dinner early, my heart racing and my mind reeling. Liam was waiting for me at home, and seeing his face was the only thing that felt right. That night, I broke down. We talked for hours and decided that we wouldn't let this destroy our plans. We'll have our wedding, Sandra, no matter what. Liam reassured me, holding me close. We downsized everything, chose a smaller venue, cut down the guest list, and made homemade decorations. It wasn't the wedding I had imagined, but it would be ours, filled with love, not the weight of betrayal. That night, as I lay beside Liam, a sense of resolve settled over me. My parents had made their choice, and now I was making mine. They would not dictate my happiness. This was the beginning of my new life with Liam, free from favoritism and unfair compromises. The anger and hurt boiled inside me for days after discovering their betrayal. I needed answers, so I arranged to meet my parents for coffee one chilly morning. The air was as tense and cold as my nerves. As soon as we sat down, I couldn't hold back. Why did you do it? Why did you give David my wedding fund without even discussing it with me? My dad sighed, rubbing his forehead. We thought we were making the right choice. David's situation was urgent. He needed to settle down after everything he's been through. And what about me? What about my wedding? My voice broke, the hurt evident. My mom looked around nervously, her voice low. Your brother needed more support, Sandra. You've always been the strong one. So that's it. You decide on my behalf because I'm strong. You spend my wedding fund as if it's nothing. The disbelief and hurt mixed into a bitter cocktail of emotions. We didn't think you'd be getting married so soon, my dad added, trying to justify their decision. Honestly, we thought you might back out, considering your past relationships. That's not your decision to make. It was my fund, promised to me. How could you gamble my dreams away on David's third attempt at marriage? I couldn't hide the scorn in my voice. The conversation grew heated as they piled on justifications, each one striking a nerve. They talked about family obligations and supporting each other, but all I heard was their clear preference for David. Finally, I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. This isn't just about money. It's about trust, about respect. You've shown where your priorities lie, and sadly, it's not with me. Leaving the cafe, I felt both liberated and sorrowful. The confrontation had laid everything bare. The parents I thought I knew prioritized David over me without remorse. The emotional toll was heavy, and I spent nights ruminating over every word exchanged. It was clear they saw David as the one who needed protection, while I was just expected to cope and move on, always the resilient one. In the weeks that followed, Liam and I continued planning our wedding. We chose a quaint local park for the ceremony, a stark contrast to the lavish venues David had enjoyed. Our decorations were simple but beautiful, handmade with care and love. Our guest list included only those who truly cared for us. No pretenses, no forced smiles. When I sent out the invitations, I made a conscious decision not to include my parents. It hurt, but it was a necessary step to protect my own well-being. They had chosen their path, and now I was choosing mine. Planning our modest wedding became a healing process. With each decision, I reclaimed a piece of myself that had been overshadowed by my family's expectations and favoritism. Liam stood by me, his support unwavering. We were building something true and lasting, far from the shadows of betrayal. This wasn't just about creating a wedding day, but about laying the foundation for our future, a future where our choices mattered and where we were free from the weight of unfair family dynamics. Our wedding day dawned bright and beautiful, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions that had led up to it. The park was bathed in the golden glow of the morning sun, the air fresh and filled with the scent of blooming flowers. It was simple, Nothing like the opulent affairs David had, but it was perfect for us. Liam and I had chosen every detail with care, from the wildflowers that lined the makeshift aisle to the gentle acoustic music that played in the background. Our friends and a few family members gathered, their faces bright with genuine happiness and love. There were no ostentatious displays, no unnecessary pomp, just a heartfelt celebration of two people committing to each other. As I walked down the aisle, my heart was full. I glanced at Liam, and the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. We were doing this right. Our vows were promises of support and companionship, spoken from the heart. When we kissed, the applause from our small group of guests felt like the sweetest music. We spent the day laughing, dancing, and sharing stories. The reception was a joyous, intimate gathering with homemade food and decorations that our friends helped create. It was a true reflection of who we were as a couple, not just a spectacle for the sake of others. Later, as we shared our wedding photos online, the reactions were immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Friends and distant relatives congratulated us, celebrating the happiness that shone through every picture. However, not everyone was pleased. When my parents saw the photos on social media, their reaction was a mix of shock and fury. They hadn't expected to be excluded, despite everything that had transpired. How could she not invite us to her own wedding? My mother's text read, brimming with indignation and hurt. After everything we've done for her. My father's response was colder and more cutting. Ungrateful. After all the years of support, clearly she's chosen her path. Their messages were a jarring note in our otherwise perfect day, but I had expected them and was prepared. With Liam's hand in mine, I felt strong enough to face the fallout. The next family gathering was tense as news of our decision spread. Whispers and sideways glances followed me whenever I entered the room. Some family members approached, questioning why I hadn't included my parents and hinting at the need for family unity. But as I explained my reasons, with Liam and those who understood supporting me, I felt a resolve within myself. This was about setting boundaries, about respecting our own needs and happiness above toxic family expectations. Despite the backlash, there was also an unexpected outpouring of support. Several cousins and aunts reached out privately, expressing their understanding and sharing their own stories of dealing with family pressures. It was comforting and reaffirming, a reminder that we weren't alone in our struggle for independence and respect. As the days turned into weeks, the initial shock from my parents faded into a strained silence. They made no further attempts to confront me directly, perhaps finally realizing the depth of their mistake. Liam and I moved forward, our bond strengthened by the trials we have faced together. Our wedding wasn't just a ceremony, it was a declaration of our commitment to live on our terms, free from the shadows and expectations that had long clouded my life. It was our first step into a future where our choices and our love were the only things that truly mattered. A few weeks after our wedding, during a routine phone call, the tone shifted abruptly. My mom's voice was strained, laced with a faint casualness. "You know, Sandra, your father and I have been thinking. It's not right what happened. We should have a proper family wedding, a big one where we can invite everyone." I paused, letting the request sink in. Mom, Liam, and I are already married. We had our wedding, the one we wanted. But that was just a tiny thing, she pressed. We're talking about something significant, where we can celebrate with all our friends and family. Think about your father, how much it would mean to him. The conversation took a darker turn when my dad came on the line, his voice unusually somber. "I've been feeling very unwell lately, Sandra. The doctor mentioned stress could be aggravating my heart. Not seeing you get married properly is taking its toll." The guilt trip was palpable, making my heart race with a mix of anger and sadness. I knew this game. Their manipulation had shaped much of my life. But this time, I was no longer the child they could sway with guilt. "Dad, I'm sorry you're feeling unwell, but our wedding has already happened. It was real and meaningful to us. You choosing not to support us beforehand doesn't give you the right to demand a redo now." There was a heavy pause on the line, then my mother's voice, sharper this time. "You're being very selfish, Sandra. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By embarrassing us in front of our friends?" The old me might have caved, apologized, and tried to mend things, but I had grown, fortified by Liam's love and the support of true friends. "No, Mom. What's embarrassing is using your daughter's wedding fund for your son's third marriage without a second thought. Liam and I are happy with how we celebrated our love, and that's all that matters." The call ended abruptly, their words hanging in the air like a bitter aftertaste. I knew this wasn't the end of it, but I felt a newfound strength within me. I wasn't the same person who once feared their disapproval. Days later, a letter arrived, formal and cold. It was an invoice detailing every expense my parents had ever incurred on my behalf, from school fees to the smallest of loans. At the bottom, a note read, "Since you've chosen to exclude us from your life, we believe it's fair you assume these costs." Liam and I laughed hollowly over the absurdity of the document. "Are they serious?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "It's just another manipulation tactic," I said, ripping the letter in half. "But it won't work this time." We decided together that it was time to cut ties officially. I drafted an email, clear and firm, outlining why I was distancing myself from them. It highlighted their lack of respect for my autonomy and their continuous attempts to manipulate my emotions. After sending the email, I felt a surge of freedom mixed with inevitable sadness. It wasn't just about separating from my parents, it was about reclaiming my life. In the weeks that followed, the air around us seemed clearer, our decisions unclouded by guilt or obligation. We were building a life on our own terms, and every small victory felt like a triumph. Their demands for a second wedding and their manipulations had only strengthened my resolve. Liam and I were united, our foundation built on mutual respect and understanding, not on the shifting sands of familial approval. This chapter of my life was about standing firm in my beliefs, about not letting guilt and manipulation dictate my choices. It was about living a life true to myself, and that was the greatest freedom I could have ever claimed. The weeks following my decision to formally distance myself from my parents were filled with a profound, liberating silence. However, that quiet was abruptly broken by a surprise visit from my parents. One afternoon, they showed up at our doorstep unannounced, their faces a mix of determination and feigned concern. "Sandra, we need to talk," my mom said, stepping forward as if to embrace me. I held up my hand, stopping her mid-stride. "There's nothing left to discuss," I replied firmly. "You received my email. I meant every word." My dad's expression hardened. "We're still your parents, Sandra. You can't just cut us out like we mean nothing. I gave you both every chance to be part of my life in a respectful, supportive way. You chose not to take those opportunities," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "What you call meaning nothing is actually me setting boundaries." They attempted to argue, to plead their case, but I was resolute. Liam and I deserve to live in peace without manipulation and guilt-tripping. This is my final decision. The confrontation reached its peak with a clarity that felt almost surreal. "Mom, Dad, I wish things were different, but they aren't. Please respect my wishes and do not contact me again." I stated the finality in my voice, mirroring the closure I sought. After a few moments of tense silence, they left, and with their departure, I felt a weight lift. I blocked their numbers, their emails, and all social media connections. It was a drastic step, but a necessary one that marked the beginning of a truly independent life. In the months that followed, Liam and I thrived. We decorated our small apartment, celebrated each other's successes, and supported one another through challenges. Life without the constant stress of familial expectations was lighter, more joyful. We often spent evenings talking about our dreams and the future we were building together. Each conversation, each plan we made, was a stitch in the new fabric of our life, one untainted by the shadows of the past. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset from our balcony, Liam took my hand. "Do you ever regret it, cutting ties?" he asked gently. I squeezed his hand, my heart full of peace. "No, because it led us here, to this moment, to a life where we are respected and loved for who we are, not for what we can give." Reflecting on everything, I realized the importance of choosing one's own path. It wasn't just about escaping toxicity. It was about honoring oneself, about living a life filled with genuine love and respect. I learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are the most necessary, and that true happiness often requires us to stand firm against the very forces that claim to love us the most. Liam and I planned trips, explored new hobbies, and built a community of friends who shared our values. We were no longer defined by my familial past, but by the choices we made each day. As I share this story, I hope it serves as a reminder that while family can be a source of great love and support, it should never come at the cost of our self-respect or happiness. Independence isn't just about physical distance, it's about emotional and mental freedom. the kind that allows us to be truly ourselves. Thank you for being part of my journey. Your support means the world. Remember, always choose a path that respects and uplifts you. Stay true, stay bold, and never settle for less than what you deserve. This brings us to the end of Sandra's story. Now, I'd like to hear from you. Do you think Sandra was right to cut ties with her family to preserve her well-being and happiness? Or do you believe there could have been another way to handle the situation? This is a tough decision, and often there's no clear right or wrong answer. Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Hi, I'm Linda, and life has thrown me more curveballs than I ever imagined. 5 years ago, I thought I hit the jackpot when I married John. He was charming, successful, and seemed to genuinely care about both me and my daughter, Emma. I already had Emma from a previous marriage, and John brought his son, Tyler, into our new blended family. I was determined to make it work, treating both kids equally and with all the love I could give. Emma, sweetie, how about we invite Tyler for movie night? I'd suggest, trying to help the kids bond. Emma would nod eagerly, always willing to try. Can we watch a superhero movie? Tyler likes those. I'd smile, proud of her. That's a great idea. Why don't you go ask him? But more often than not, Tyler would shrug off the invitation. Nah, I'm good. Got plans with my friends, he'd say, barely looking up. John would reassure me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. He's a teenager, Linda. It's normal for him to want space. I'd nod, trying to silence my doubts. You're right, I just want us all to be close. Things took a turn 2 years ago when my parents passed away, leaving me a sizable inheritance. I was determined to use it wisely. John, I think we should set some of this money aside for Emma's future, I suggested one night as we sat together reviewing paperwork. He nodded, but something in his eyes unsettled me. Of course, but we should think about Tyler too. He's closer to college age. A twinge of unease crept up my spine. Tyler's mom is handling his college fund. Remember, we agreed on that when we got married. I know, he said, a bit too casually. I'm just saying we should keep our options open. I should have paid more attention to that moment. I should have seen the red flags. My best friend Olivia even tried to warn me. Over coffee one afternoon, she gently raised her concerns. Linda, don't you think John favors Tyler a bit too much? She asked cautiously. I bristled at first. What? No, he loves both kids equally. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? I've seen how he is with them. It's different. I waved it off, more to convince myself than her. Blending families is hard. We're still figuring it out. Just keep your eyes open, okay? And remember, I'm here if you need me, she said, squeezing my hand. I was grateful for her support, though I didn't realize how much I'd need it in the months to come. As time went on, a nagging feeling grew inside me. Something was off with our finances. Bills I thought I paid were showing up overdue, and our savings seemed to be shrinking faster than I could explain. John, have you noticed anything strange with our bank statements? I asked one evening. He barely looked up from his phone. No, everything seems fine. Why? I don't know, something just feels off. He finally met my eyes, his expression unreadable. You worry too much, Linda. I've got everything under control. I wanted to believe him, but then I found it, a withdrawal for $5,000 that I hadn't made. My heart raced as I dug deeper. The more I looked, the worse it got. Multiple large withdrawals, passwords changed without my knowledge. Panic set in. That night, I called Olivia. Liv, I think something's really wrong, I said, my voice shaking. She listened as I spilled everything, John's dismissive attitude, the unexplained withdrawals, the changed passwords. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. Linda, this sounds serious. You need professional help. I know a private investigator, Mike Carson. Want me to call him? I hesitated, then agreed. A week later, Mike called me into his office. The look on his face told me everything before he even spoke. Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid I have some bad news, he began. John hadn't just been making a few unauthorized withdrawals. He'd been systematically draining our joint account, transferring large sums to an account in Tyler's name. Mike slid a document across the desk. I stared at it, struggling to process what I was seeing. Money meant for both our children's futures, money from my inheritance. There's more, Mike continued. John told Tyler this money was a gift for his future. Tyler's been aware of this for some time. That night, I confronted John. I'll never forget the look on his face, not guilt or shame, but irritation, as if I had inconvenienced him by uncovering his betrayal. Tyler needs it more, John said, as if that somehow justified everything. He's closer to college age. And what about Emma's future? I demanded, my voice rising. What have you left for her? John had the audacity to shrug. There's a savings bond in her name. That should be enough. I was speechless, but the betrayal ran deeper than I could have imagined. Over the next few days, I uncovered even more lies. Friends started reaching out, concerned about things John had apparently been saying about me. He'd been painting me as unstable, unreasonable, a bad mother. And Emma, my sweet Emma, had been caught in the mill. John had been manipulating her, making her keep secrets from me. As the full extent of John and Tyler's deception became clear, I felt a rage I had never known before. Sitting in my car outside our house, a house that no longer felt like home, I made a decision. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. John and Tyler might think they'd won, but they had no idea what was coming. I was done being the victim. It was time to fight back. John had already proven he was willing to lie and steal, so I couldn't let him see me coming. The next morning, I called in sick to work and met with Lisa Chen, a divorce lawyer Olivia had recommended. Based on what you've told me, Linda, we have a strong case for financial fraud, Lisa said, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. But we'll need ironclad evidence. Can you access all your financial records? I nodded, determination hardening inside me. I'll find a way. At home, I played the role of the dutiful wife, pretending I'd moved past my suspicions. John bought it hook, line, and sinker. I'm glad you've come around, honey, he said one night, kissing my cheek. I knew you'd understand eventually. I forced a smile, bile rising in my throat. Of course, dear. I trust you. Meanwhile, I was gathering evidence as if my life depended on it. I reached out to my company's IT department, spinning a story about a personal project. Hey, Sarah, chirped Alex, our resident tech whiz. What can I do for you? I'm working on tracking some old transactions for a side gig, I lied smoothly. Any tips on how to trace digital money transfers? Alex's eyes lit up. Oh, I've got just the tools for that. Let me show you. Armed with Alex's tech know-how, I dug deeper into our finances. The more I uncovered, the worse it got. John hadn't just been stealing from me, he'd been cooking the books at his own company too. That night, I anonymously tipped off John's company about the embezzlement. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. A few days later, all hell broke loose. John came home in a panic, his face ashen. Sarah, we need to talk, he said, his voice shaking. I steel myself. This was it. Yes, we do, John. He launched into a frantic explanation about misunderstandings and mistakes, begging for my help to cover his tracks. But I'd had enough of the lies. Stop, John, I said, my voice cold. I know everything. The money you stole from our account, from my inheritance, the lies you've been telling about me, the way you've manipulated Emma, and now your little embezzlement scheme at work. John's face crumpled. He fell to his knees, grabbing my hands. Sarah, please, I'm so sorry. I'll make it right, I swear. We can fix this together. I pulled my hands away. Fix this, John. You've stolen our daughter's future. You've lied to my face for months. You've tried to turn our friends against me. There's no fixing this. But I love you, he pleaded, tears in his eyes. We can start over. Please just give me another chance. No, John, I said, my voice steady. It's too late for that. We're done. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead would be hard. But for the first time in months, I could see a future where Emma and I were free from lies and betrayal. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, Emma working on her homework beside me, when my phone buzzed with a news alert. Local accountant under investigation for major fraud. The headline screamed at me. My hands shook as I read the article. Emma looked up, concern in her eyes. Mom, what's wrong? I forced a smile. Nothing, sweetie, just some work stuff. But I couldn't shield her from the truth for long. The police got involved, freezing John's assets, and Tyler's, too. That same day, I filed for divorce, citing financial abuse and fraud. Lisa, my lawyer, was a godsend through it all. We've got him, Sarah, she said, her voice fierce. He won't get away with this. As the truth came to light, our friends and family were stunned. I'll never forget the look on my in-laws' faces when they learned what their son had done. "We had no idea," John's mother sobbed. "Sarah, we're so sorry." Tyler, confronted with the reality of his part in his father's schemes, tried to backpedal. He showed up at our door one day, all bravado gone. "Sarah, I swear I didn't know where the money was coming from," he pleaded. I just shook my head. "Save it, Tyler. You're old enough to know right from wrong." The hardest part was telling Emma. We sat her down one evening and I explained as gently as I could about her father's betrayal. "But why, Mom?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "Why would Dad do this?" I pulled her close. "I don't have Sweetie, but we're going to be okay. I promise." I enrolled Emma in therapy to help her cope with the upheaval. 2 years later, life looks very different. I'm thriving in my career, having earned a promotion last month. Emma, now 12, is excelling in school and has found a passion for soccer. "Mom, did you see that goal I scored?" she yelled, running off the field after a game. I scooped her up in a hug. "I sure did, champ. You were amazing." John is serving time for his crimes, financially ruined. I've heard through the grapevine that Tyler is struggling, working a minimum wage job and living with his mother. As for me, I feel vindicated, stronger than I ever thought possible. Emma and I have built a stable, loving home, free from the toxic influences of our past. Looking back on this journey, I realize that while the betrayal nearly broke me, it also revealed my resilience. Emma and I faced the storm together, and we've come out stronger on the other side. Our future is bright, filled with love, trust, and endless possibilities. And that's a happy ending I never saw coming. Now I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have given John a second chance? Or do you believe some betrayals are too deep to forgive, even when it comes to family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hey everyone, I'm Margaret, 25 years old and an aspiring artist. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I'd be sharing a story about how my own grandmother tried to burn me with boiling water. But here we are. It all started 2 years ago when my mom, Sarah, passed away. She was my best friend, my rock, and losing her felt like a piece of my soul had been ripped out. The only thing that gave me comfort was the beautiful collection of jewelry she left behind. Each piece carried a memory, a story. After Mom died, I stayed in the family home with my grandma, Martha. At first, it was comforting, like having a small part of Mom still with me. But things started to get strange when Frank entered the picture. "Margaret, dear, have you met Frank? He's such a gentleman," Grandma said one day, smiling brightly. I forced a smile back. "Nice to meet you, Frank." Frank, a charming 60-year-old widower, started visiting more frequently. I wanted to be happy for Grandma, but something about him just didn't sit right with me. My best friend Zoe noticed too. One afternoon, over coffee, Zoe said, "Liv, don't you think it's time you got your own place? Your grandma's acting like a teenager with this Frank guy." I sighed. "I know, but I can't just leave her. Besides, all of Mom's stuff is still there." Zoe gave me a knowing look. "Your mom would want you to live your life, not babysit your grandma." She had a point, but I felt like I needed to stay. Work was my only escape. I've been doing graphic design at a small firm, trying to save up for art supplies. That's when I met Ethan. "Hey Margaret, check out this design I'm working on," Ethan called out one day. I leaned over, catching a whiff of his cologne. "Wow, that's amazing. I wish I could create like that." He smiled. "Are you kidding? Your work is incredible. You should really think about doing your own art full-time." I blushed a little flutter in my chest. Ethan saw the artist in me that I was trying to bring out, but every time I thought I was moving forward, something at home pulled me back. Like when I met Frank's son, Derek, at a family dinner. "So Margaret," Derek said, glancing between me and his dad. "How long have Frank and your grandma known each other?" I shrugged. "A few months, I guess." "Why?" His expression tightened. "No reason. Just curious." His tone made me uneasy, but before I could ask more, Grandma burst into the room. "I have wonderful news, everyone," she exclaimed, beaming. "Frank and I are getting married." The room fell silent, and it felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "Married? Grandma, isn't this a bit sudden?" I asked, shocked. She waved me off. "Oh, pish posh. When you know, you know." As everyone congratulated them, I couldn't shake the growing dread. Something was very wrong, and I had no idea how bad it was about to get. In the weeks following Grandma's engagement announcement, everything spiraled into chaos. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone, her voice tense. "I'll get the money, I promise. Just give me more time." When I asked her about it, she snapped at me. "It's none of your business, Margaret. Can't an old woman have some privacy?" I backed off, but my suspicions only grew. Then things got worse. I noticed that Mom's antique locket was missing from my dresser. "Grandma, have you seen Mom's locket?" I asked, trying to keep calm. She avoided eye contact. "Oh, that old thing. I must have moved it while cleaning. Don't worry about it." But I was worried. I called Zoe in a panic. "Zoe, I think Grandma's up to something shady. Mom's jewelry is disappearing, and she's acting all secretive about money." Zoe paused. "That doesn't sound good. Liv, want me to dig around?" A few days later, Zoe called with some disturbing news. "Liv, you're not going to like this. Your grandma's drowning in debt. And that Frank guy? He's been known to cozy up to wealthy widows and disappear with their money." My stomach dropped. "Oh God, Zoe, what do I do?" She replied, "Keep your eyes open. We need solid proof." For the next week, I watched Grandma closely. The final straw came when I saw her sneaking out early one morning with Mom's jewelry box tucked under her arm. I followed her to a shady pawn shop, and there she was, selling off piece after piece of my mother's jewelry. I couldn't hold back any longer. "Grandma, what are you doing?" I shouted as I burst into the shop. She turned, guilt and anger flashing across her face. "Margaret, you followed me. How could you?" "That's Mom's jewelry. It's all I have left of her." I cried, my voice trembling with hurt and anger. Her eyes hardened. "You don't understand. Frank and I need the money for our new life together. Your mother would have wanted me to be happy." By selling her memories, by lying to me, I was shaking with disbelief and rage. "You ungrateful child," she spat. "After everything I've done for you." She grabbed a kettle of boiling water from behind the counter. Before I could react, she hurled it at me. Searing pain exploded across my arm and shoulder, and I screamed, stumbling backward into a glass display case, the shattering glass mixing with my cries of agony. I looked up at Grandma's face. There was no concern, no regret, just cold, hard anger. As I crumpled to the floor, clutching my burned arm, one thought crystallized in my mind. The grandmother I had known and loved was gone. In her place stood a stranger, someone who had shattered the last shred of trust between us. The pawn shop owner rushed back in, yelling about calling an ambulance, but my focus was on Grandma Martha, gathering up the jewelry with trembling hands. In that moment, as the searing pain threatened to pull me under, I made a silent vow. This betrayal wouldn't break me. It would be the fuel I needed to reclaim my life and my mother's legacy, no matter the cost. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits, police reports, and tears. The burns on my arm and shoulder were healing, but the emotional scars, those ran deep. Zoe was my rock. "You're staying with me," she insisted, helping me pack up my things from Grandma's house. No arguments. I didn't have the energy to fight her. As we loaded the last box into Zoe's car, Grandma Martha came out, her voice trembling. "Margaret, please, can we talk?" I couldn't even look at her. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice." A few days later, I got a surprising call from Derek, Frank's son. "Margaret, it's Derek. I heard what happened, and I'm so sorry. There's something you need to know about my dad." We met at a coffee shop, and Derek laid it all out. Frank had a history. Charming wealthy widows, draining their bank accounts and disappearing without a trace. Grandma Martha was just his latest target. "I've tried to stop him before," Derek said, his voice heavy with guilt. "But he always weasels out of it. Maybe this time, with your help, we can finally put an end to it." I hesitated. I'm not sure I can handle any more drama. But Zoe, ever the fighter, wasn't about to let it go. "We can't let them get away with this, Liv. We need a plan." Over the next week, we devised a scheme. Derek would play along with Frank's plan, pretending to help with the wedding, while we worked with the pawn shop owner to set up a sting operation. "I feel bad for ratting out your grandma," the pawn shop owner admitted when we approached him. "But what she did to you, that ain't right." As we fine-tuned the plan, Ethan was my steady support. He'd come over after work, bringing food and offering a shoulder to lean on. But I found myself pulling away. The fear of being hurt again was overwhelming. One night, as we sat on Zoe's couch, Ethan reached for my hand. I flinched. "Liv, talk to me," he said, his voice pleading. "What's going on in that head of yours?" I couldn't meet his eyes. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I can't. Everyone I've trusted has betrayed me. My own grandmother tried to." I choked up, unable to finish the sentence. Ethan's voice was soft. "I'm not them, Margaret. I would never hurt you like that." "That's why I thought about Grandma too," I whispered. The hurt in his eyes was clear, but he didn't push. "I understand. Just know I'm here. Okay, whatever you need." The day of the sting operation arrived. We had set up hidden cameras in the pawn shop and wired Derek for sound. The plan was for him to bring Grandma Martha and Frank to the shop under the pretense of selling family heirlooms to fund the wedding. I watched from a distance as they entered the shop. Grandma clutched her purse tightly, and Frank's arm was draped around her shoulders. But even from where I stood, I could see the predatory glint in his eyes. As the door closed behind them, I took a deep breath. Whatever happened next would change everything. I just hoped we were ready for it. The day of reckoning finally arrived, and I stood in the back of the packed courthouse, heart racing as the judge read out the verdict. Frank's smug smile vanished as the words "guilty on all counts" echoed through the room. After the trial, I left my grandmother's house for the last time, finishing the final bit of packing. As I glanced up, I saw Grandma watching from the window. Our eyes met briefly before she quickly drew the curtains. That was the last time I ever saw her. With the nightmare behind me, I threw myself into my art. The pain, the betrayal, the healing, it all poured out onto my canvases. Ethan was by my side through it all. One night, as he studied my latest piece, he said, "These are incredible, Liv. You're turning your pain into something beautiful." I leaned into him, feeling safe for the first time in months. "I couldn't have done it without you." Zoe, always the unstoppable force, helped me set up my own studio. "This is just the beginning," she declared as we painted the walls together. "You're going to be huge, Liv. I can feel it." And she was right. My first small exhibition sold out in a week. Then came a feature in a local art magazine, and before I knew it, galleries in the city were calling. The night of my exhibition opening, I looked around at the vibrant crowd, at my art lining the walls, and at Ethan smiling proudly from across the room. Asterisk to new beginnings, asterisk, I whispered to myself, raising my glass. And to the family we choose. The pain of betrayal had forged me into something stronger, something unbreakable. As I clinked glasses with my friends, I silently thanked the hardships that had led me here. They hadn't broken me, they had set me free. Now I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you ever forgive Martha for what she did? Is there a line that, once crossed, makes reconciliation impossible, even with family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hey there, I'm Isabella, a 28-year-old marketing exec living in the suburbs of Chicago. I'm sitting in my favorite coffee shop, trying to focus on work, when my phone buzzes. It's my sister, Margaret. "Ezzy, can you watch the kids tonight?" "I have a late meeting," she asks. I smile, already knowing my answer. "Of course, V, you know I love spending time with Ethan and Safia." Margaret's voice cracks a little. "Thanks, sis. I don't know what I'd do without you." As I hang up, I can't help but think about how much has changed since Margaret's divorce. She's been struggling, and I've been doing my best to be there for her and the kids. Later that evening, I'm at her place, helping Ethan with his math homework while Safia colors nearby. The doorbell rings, and my stomach drops when I hear familiar voices in the hallway. "Mom? Dad? What are you doing here?" Margaret asks, surprised. I cringe, already knowing this won't go well. Our parents, Robert and Linda, are well-off real estate developers, always with a sense of superiority. They favored Margaret for years, but since her divorce, they've been relentless. "We came to check on our grandchildren," Mom says, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I roll my eyes and prepare for what's coming. As they step into the living room, Dad's eyes narrow when he spots me. "Oh, Isabella, you're here too." "Yeah, just helping my sister," I reply, my voice laced with sarcasm. "You know, being supportive." Mom ignores me, her focus solely on Margaret. "Darling, we're worried about you." This divorce, it's not good for the children. Have you thought about reconciling with Mark? Margaret's face falls. Mom, we've been through this. The divorce is final. Mark and I aren't getting back together. Dad cuts in, his voice cold. You need to think about your reputation. The family's reputation. This divorce is a disgrace. I feel my blood boiling. Are you serious? Margaret's happiness doesn't matter. The fact that Mark was awful doesn't matter. Isabella, stay out of this. Mom snaps, blaring at me. This is why you're still single. No respect for family values. I bite my tongue, thinking about Jake, the amazing guy I've been dating for 6 months. If only they knew. As the argument escalates, I notice Ethan and Sophia looking scared. I kneel down beside them. Hey kiddos, how about we go get some ice cream? Their faces light up, and we sneak out the back door, leaving the chaos behind. As we walk to the ice cream parlor, I can't help but think about my own big news and how I'm going to break it to my family. Later that night, as I'm getting ready for bed, my phone pings. It's a text from Jake. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Love you. I smile, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. I'm pregnant, and I'm terrified of how my family will react. But as I drift off to sleep, I promise myself and my baby that no matter what happens, we'll be just fine. The next evening, I sit at the dinner table, Jake's hand squeezing mine under the tablecloth. My parents, Robert and Linda, sit at the head of the table, looking as uptight as ever. I clear my throat. So I have some news. All eyes turn to me. Here goes nothing. Jake and I, we're having a baby. Jake beams beside me. We're so excited, he adds, giving my hand another squeeze. The silence that follows is deafening, then all hell breaks loose. What did you just say? Mom shrieks, her face turning a dangerous shade of red. Dad slams his fist on the table, making the silverware rattle. Isabella, how could you be so irresponsible? Out of wedlock? Have you no shame? I feel my cheeks burn. It's the 21st century, Dad. Jake and I love each other. We're happy about this. Mom scoffs. Happy? You've disgraced this family. What will people say? Oh, so that's what this is about. I snap. Your precious reputation. Margaret tries to step in. Mom, Dad, please, can't we just? But Dad cuts her off. Don't you start, Margaret. We're not done with you either. A chill runs down my spine. What's that supposed to mean? Mom's face twists into a smug smile. Well, since you asked, we decided to sue for custody of Ethan and Sophia. The room goes silent. Margaret's face goes pale. What? She whispers. You heard us, Dad says, his tone cold. With your demanding job and this messy divorce, you're clearly an unfit mother. We're doing what's best for the children. I can't believe what I'm hearing. Are you kidding me? Margaret is an amazing mom. You can't do this. We can and we will, Mom says flatly. Unless what? I ask, dreading the answer. Dad leans forward. Unless you fix your little mistake, we'll forget this whole pregnancy nonsense if you do the right thing. I feel like I've been slapped. Fix my mistake? You mean get rid of my baby? Are you out of your minds? Jake stands abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. That's enough. Isabella, we're leaving. But I'm not done. I turn to Margaret. Sis, you can't let them do this. Fight them. Margaret just sits there, tears streaming down her face, saying nothing. Dad points to the door. Get out. You're no daughter of ours. Gladly, I spit back, grabbing my purse. As Jake and I head for the door, I turn back one last time. You know what? I feel sorry for you. You're so obsessed with appearances that you've forgotten what really matters. Family, love, happiness. You're the ones who should be ashamed. With that, we walk out, slamming the door behind us. Once we're in the car, the reality of what just happened crashes down on me, and I break down, sobbing uncontrollably. Jake pulls me into his arms. It's okay, Azzy. We've got each other. We've got our baby. That's all that matters. As we drive away from my childhood home, I realize he's right. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of a new chapter, and I'm ready to fight for it. It's been a whirlwind few months since that disastrous family dinner. Jake and I found a cozy little apartment, and let me tell you, waking up next to him every morning makes all the drama worth it. Plus, this baby bump of mine is getting harder to ignore, in a good way. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Margaret's custody battle is in full swing, and it's really taking a toll on her. One afternoon, I stop by her place and find her surrounded by legal papers, looking like she hasn't slept in days. "Hey V, how are you holding up?" She looks up at me, dark circles under her eyes. "I'm hanging in there, barely." I plop down next to her on the couch. "Listen, I've been thinking. We need to fight fire with fire." "What do you mean?" she asks, confused. I take a deep breath. I hired a private investigator to look into Mom and Dad's business dealings. Margaret's eyes widen. "You did what?" "Hear me out," I say, leaning in. "The PI found some interesting stuff. Embezzlement, offshore accounts, property flipping schemes." As I fill her in on the details, Margaret's jaw drops lower with each revelation. "Holy, I can't believe it," she whispers. "Believe it, sis. Our dear parents aren't as squeaky clean as they pretend to be." Margaret shakes her head, still in shock. "But how does this help us?" I lean in closer, a plan forming in my mind. "Think about it. They're trying to paint you as an unfit mother. Well, how about we show the court who the real unfit guardians are?" A spark of hope flickers in Margaret's eyes. "You really think we can beat them?" "I know we can," I say confidently. "But V, you've got to be ready for a fight. No more sitting quietly while they steamroll over us. Are you with me?" For a moment, she hesitates. Then, straightening her shoulders, she nods. "I'm with you. For Ethan and Sophia. For all of us." We spend the next few hours plotting, our heads bent together over my laptop. As we work, I feel the baby kick, as if saying, "You've got this, Mom." That night, I drift off to sleep with my mind racing with plans and possibilities. Mom and Dad think they've got all the power, but they're in for one heck of a surprise. This mama bear is ready to roar, and I got the truth on my side. Maybe, just maybe, we'll save our family in the process, not the family they wanted us to be, but the family we choose to create. Strong, supportive, and real. The day of the custody hearing arrives, and I'm a bundle of nerves. My baby bump is now impossible to hide, and Jake has been my rock through it all. As we walk into the courthouse, I spot Margaret pacing nervously. "You ready for this?" I ask her. She nods, determination shining in her eyes. "Let's do this. For Ethan and Sophia." Inside the courtroom, the tension is thick. Mom and Dad sit there looking smug as ever. If only they knew what was coming. When it's my turn to testify, I take a deep breath and spill it all. "Your Honor," I say, my voice shaking but strong. "My parents aren't fit to raise a goldfish, let alone 2 children. They see kids as accessories, not human beings with needs and feelings." Mom's face turns purple with rage, but I keep going. I tell the court about the anonymous tip to the SEC about their shady business dealings. Then Margaret takes the stand, presenting evidence of how Mom and Dad tried to manipulate Ethan and Sophia, filling their heads with lies about their mother. With every word, the truth chips away at the perfect facade our parents have built. This time, we aren't backing down. The judge, thoroughly unimpressed with my parents, doesn't take long to make her decision. Custody remains with the mother, Margaret. This case is dismissed. The relief on Margaret's face is palpable, but the drama isn't over. As we leave the courtroom, 2 men in suits approach Mom and Dad. "Robert and Linda, we're with the Securities and Exchange Commission. You're under arrest for multiple financial crimes." Watching them being led away in handcuffs, I feel nothing. No joy, no sadness, just a sense of closure. Months pass, and life settles into a new rhythm. Jake and I welcome our daughter, Hope, into the world. Holding her for the first time, I make a silent promise to always put her needs first. Margaret throws herself into being the best mom she can be. Seeing her with Ethan and Sophia, laughing, playing, makes all the struggles worth it. Jake and I have a small, intimate wedding. No fancy frills, just love and our closest friends. Margaret is my maid of honor, of course. As for Mom and Dad, last I heard, they're facing years in prison. Their assets are frozen, their reputation in tatters. But honestly, I don't think about them much these days. One sunny afternoon, I'm sitting in our backyard, Hope napping in her bassinet. Jake's grading papers, and I can hear Margaret and the kids laughing as they set up for a barbecue. I think about how far we've come, the family I've created. Jake, Hope, Margaret, Ethan, and Sophia. It's not perfect, but it's real. It's built on love, support, and honesty. Penny for your thoughts, Jake says, smiling as he leans into me. I smile back, just thinking about how lucky we are, how sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. Couldn't agree more, he says, squeezing my hand. As the smell of the grill fills the air and the kids' excited chatter echoes in the background, I know this is what family should be. We've been through hell, but we've come out stronger. And the future? It's looking brighter than ever. Now I have a question for you. How far would you go to protect your loved ones from manipulative family members? Would you expose their illegal activities, even if it meant potentially destroying your family's reputation and sending your own parents to prison? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hi, I'm Jenna. I had just turned 32 when I decided to buy my first house. A quaint little place with a cozy backyard, perfect for my 2 dogs. Buying this house wasn't just a financial step. It was my declaration of independence, my way of claiming control over my own life. The day of the housewarming came with a mix of excitement and nerves. I planned everything meticulously, wanting it to be a blend of fun and formality, a true milestone. My parents were the only family I invited, given the complicated dynamics of extending further. As guests arrived, the afternoon buzzed with laughter and conversation. I was in the middle of showing my college friend Lisa some renovation plans when the doorbell rang again. Expecting a neighbor or a late arriving friend, I opened the door with a smile, only to find my mom standing there with Carson and his daughter, Vanessa. Carson grinned, though it didn't reach his eyes, while Vanessa looked around my living room like she had just walked into a thrift store. Jenna, darling, hope you don't mind us bringing a little extra company, my mom chirped, breezing past me without waiting for a response. For a moment, I was too stunned to speak. Mom, I thought it was just going to be us. I finally said, my voice a mix of confusion and irritation. Oh honey, I knew you wouldn't mind. Carson really wanted to see your place, and Vanessa's been excited to meet you, she gushed, as if she hadn't ignored my carefully curated guest list. As the party went on, I tried to push down the frustration, thinking maybe it could still be a good day. But I was wrong. I would have chosen a different color here. This shade is so 2010, Vanessa said loudly, eyeing my living room with disdain. My friends, caught in the moment, exchanged awkward glances as the room fell silent. My cheeks burned with a mix of embarrassment and anger. This was supposed to be my celebration, my moment. I couldn't let her ruin it. I turned to Vanessa, forcing a tight smile. Well, not all of us need to follow the latest trends to feel good about our homes. Some of us prefer something more timeless, I replied, sharper than I intended. But it didn't end there. Why would anyone arrange their living room like this? It's almost like she's never heard of interior design, Vanessa quipped. That was it. I couldn't hold back any longer. My friends, clearly uncomfortable, watched as I marched over to Vanessa. The room grew tense. You know, Vanessa, if you have suggestions, I'm all ears. But maybe you could share them without insulting my choices in front of my guests, I said, my voice calm but firm. Vanessa blinked, surprised, then scoffed. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. No need to be so sensitive. Judging by the supportive looks from my friends, they weren't thinking anything of the sort. Despite the awkward tension, I could feel them backing me up. Just as I thought things would cool down, my mom pulled me aside, her face tense with anxiety. Jenna, could we talk in private? She asked softly. In the hallway, away from the party, she dropped the bombshell. Honey, I know it's a lot to ask, but could Vanessa stay with you for a while? Just until they sort out their living situation. Her request hit me like a punch. Mom, I can't. This is my space, and after tonight, it's clear Vanessa and I aren't exactly compatible. Her face fell. Jenna, she's struggling. You know how tough Carson can be on her. It would only be for a little while. I could feel the weight of her expectations pressing down on me, like so many times before when she tried to fix things by putting me in uncomfortable situations. But this was too much. Mom, no, I need to set boundaries. I can't have her stay here, not after how she's behaved. I'm sorry, but that's my final answer. The hurt in her eyes stung, but I knew I had to stand my ground. As she walked away, her shoulders slumped, and I felt a strange mix of triumph and dread. I had finally stood up for myself, but I knew this wasn't the end of it. As the party wound down and the last guests left, the house felt quieter, almost eerie. The echoes of laughter were replaced by a stillness that settled heavily in the air. I started cleaning up, the simple task grounding me. Each dish I washed, every crumb I swept, felt like I was trying to clear away not just the physical mess. Debris wasn't the only thing I was trying to clear away. The emotional turmoil that had spilled over throughout the night clung to me. Lying in bed later, with the house dark and still around me, I replayed the evening in my mind. My spine tingled with the apprehension of what was to come. Vanessa's smug smirk, Carson's disapproving glare, my mother's disappointment, they all haunted the edges of my thoughts. As sleep finally claimed me, I clung to the hope that maybe the fallout wouldn't be as bad as I feared. But deep down, I knew better. This was just the beginning, and the repercussions of my refusal would ripple further than I could imagine. The next morning started out ordinarily enough. Coffee, a quick scroll through emails, and a mental to-do list for the day. But that normalcy shattered with a ping from my phone. A security alert from my home system. Panic gripped my chest as I viewed the live feed. Someone was at my house. I rushed home, my mind racing with possibilities. Nothing prepared me for what I found. The locks had been changed. My key was useless against the new mechanism. Peering through the window, my blood boiled as I saw Vanessa lounging on my sofa, a smug smile plastered across her face. "What are you doing in my house?" I shouted through the door. The door swung open, and there stood Carson, grinning wide and unwelcoming. "Oh, Jenna, we thought we'd take you up on that offer to stay. After all," he sneered, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "There was no offer, Carson. Get out of my house now," I snapped, my voice sharp with a command I hoped would cut through his arrogance. Carson leaned lazily against the doorframe, his posture relaxed in stark contrast to the rising anger in my voice. Now, Jenna, let's not be hasty. You wouldn't want to upset your mother, would you? You know how she feels about the police." His words hit their mark. Carson knew exactly how to manipulate the situation. My mother had a deep-rooted fear of the police, stemming from a traumatic incident in her past, and Carson wielded that knowledge like a weapon. But I couldn't let that stop me. This was my home, my sanctuary. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the police, Carson. You can't just break into someone's house and change the locks." His smirk faltered, uncertainty flickering across his face as I dialed. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the street. The police arrived swiftly, their questions precise. Carson and Vanessa's attempts to spin the situation fell flat against the legal reality of their actions. "I have every right to secure my property," Carson argued, though his confidence waned under the officer's unimpressed gaze. "The locks were changed without permission, and she was not notified," an officer said, making notes in his book. The law was clear. Carson and Vanessa had no leg to stand on. The eviction was quick. Carson and Vanessa were escorted out, their protests muted by the firm instructions of the police. Watching them leave, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that my home was mine again, sorrow for the inevitable fallout this would cause with my mother. As the police wrapped up their report, one officer lingered. "Are you going to be okay?" he asked, his tone kind. I nodded, though my heart was heavy. "Yes, thank you. I didn't have a choice." He offered a sympathetic smile before leaving. Once the door clicked shut behind him, I stood in the quiet aftermath. The house felt larger and emptier, the space that was almost taken from me suddenly overwhelming. I walked through each room, reaffirming my presence in the place that had been violated. The weight of the day pressed down on me, a reminder that the battles were far from over. Carson and Vanessa might be gone, but the repercussions would ripple through my family, possibly irreversibly. Yet despite the turmoil, a stubborn flame of defiance flickered within me. This was my home, and I would fight for it, no matter the cost. The silence of the evening was shattered by the sharp ring of my phone. My heart sank as I saw my mother's name flash on the screen. I braced myself for the inevitable conversation. "Mom," I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. "Jenna," she began, her tone thick with emotion. How could you do this to Carson and Vanessa after everything they've been through?" Her words cut deep. I struggled to keep my voice steady. "Mom, they broke into my house. They changed my locks. What was I supposed to do? Just let them take over my home?" "You could have handled it differently, Jenna. You know how I feel about the police," she replied, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disappointment. Mom, I didn't have a choice. They left me no choice. This is my home, and I had to protect it, I said, frustration creeping into my tone. There was a long, heavy pause, the weight of her next words hanging between us. I can't believe this. I thought you understood, Jenna. I thought you cared more about your family. I do care, Mom, I whispered, but shouldn't my safety and my rights matter too? Why is it always about what I can do for others, never about what's right for me? The questions tumbled out, years of suppressed feelings fueling my words. You just don't get it, do you? Her voice cracked, laced with a mix of anger and sorrow. I can't support this. I can't be part of it. My throat tightened. What are you saying? I asked, dreading the answer. I think it's better if we don't talk for a while. I need to think about all this. Her final words cut through the air before she ended the call, leaving behind a silence that felt like a void. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor. My mother, my lifelong anchor, had cast me adrift over this. I sank into the couch, the soft fabric offering no comfort. Looking out the window, the night stretched on endlessly, and the once comforting contours of my home now felt alien, reshaped by the day's events. Thoughts swirled in my mind of family loyalty, manipulation, and the personal cost of standing up for myself. Was there another way I could have handled it? A path that wouldn't have led to this rift? As the night drew on, I wrestled with those questions. Manipulation wasn't just about coercion. It was about making someone feel guilty for holding their ground. Carson had used my mother's fears to control me, and now my mother was unintentionally doing the same with her disappointment. By dawn, a quiet resolve had settled over me. Protecting my emotional and psychological space was just as vital as defending my physical one. The rift with my mother was painful, but it was necessary for my growth. Standing in the stillness of the early morning, I knew that while the battle for my home was over, the journey to reclaim my life had just begun. As days turned into weeks, the sting of my mother's words faded into a persistent ache, a constant reminder of the price of my newfound autonomy. Her silence was deafening, but with each passing day, I found pieces of myself I hadn't realized I'd lost in the fray of family obligations. My home, once a battleground of invasion and conflict, began to transform back into the sanctuary I had envisioned. I repainted the living room, erasing the remnants of Vanessa's scornful remarks. With every stroke of the brush, I reclaimed my space. New locks, stronger and more secure, clicked reassuringly under my fingers, symbolizing the boundaries I was learning to set. In the solitude of my reclaimed home, I discovered a resilience I hadn't given myself credit for. Friends and neighbors, aware of the ordeal, rallied around me. Their support soothed the isolation my family's absence had left behind. Dinners, movie nights, and long walks with those who chose to stay by my side filled my days, reminding me that family isn't only about blood, it's about who stands with you when the ground falls away. The fate of Carson and Vanessa became a distant murmur, their paths diverging from mine in the wake of their eviction. Rumors of their struggles occasionally reached me through mutual acquaintances, but they no longer held sway over my emotions. My focus was on rebuilding, on fortifying the life I chose, rather than the one imposed upon me. One crisp morning, as I stood in my garden planting seeds that would one day bloom into vibrant flowers, I realized this was what true independence felt like. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of peace in its aftermath. The estrangement from my mother was a deep scar, one that might never fully heal, but it was also a testament to the lengths I would go to protect my peace. The journey to self-empowerment is often a solitary one, fraught with tough decisions and painful reckonings. But as I looked around the home I fought to protect, I knew it was worth it. Here, in my home space, I was free to live life on my terms, surrounded by those who respected and supported my boundaries. This wasn't just a house, it was my declaration of independence. Hi, I'm Mia, 30 years old, trying to keep my life balanced amidst the family chaos. Growing up, I always felt like the backdrop in a play where my sister, Sophia, took center stage. Our mom has a way of making everything feel like an audition for her approval. And let's just say Sophia always got the lead role. It's not Sophia's fault though, she's been going through a tough time after her divorce. But somehow, mom uses this as a reason to put more pressure on me. Just last week, during our dreaded Sunday family dinner, mom slipped into her usual spiral. You know, Mia, maybe if you weren't so tied down, Sophia wouldn't feel so alone. It's not healthy for her to see you and him so settled. Her words were cold, aimed to sting, and I could feel them freezing me out. I don't understand why my marriage has anything to do with Sophia's happiness. Shouldn't we be supporting her and finding her own way? I tried to keep my voice even, but inside I was boiling. Oh, come on, Mia. Maybe loosen up a bit. Live a little, like Sophia. Take a break from him. She waved dismissively, as if my husband were some accessory I could toss aside. Mom, I'm not divorcing my husband just to make Sophia feel better. That's absurd. I finally snapped. Sophia, who had been quietly picking at her food, glanced up, her eyes flickering between us. You always do this, Mom shot back, her voice rising. You make everything about you. Think about your sister for once. The tension was thick, cutting through the air. But for once, Sophia spoke up. Actually, Mia has a point. Her voice was shaky but firm. I don't need her to be single to feel better. This isn't about me, is it, Mom? Silence filled the room. Mom's face tightened, her eyes narrowing as she turned to Sophia. So you're on her side now? The dinner ended in cold, clipped goodbyes. On the drive home, my husband reached over and held my hand, his silent support steadying me. But the weight of Mom's words sat heavy between us. After a long silence, he finally spoke, his voice careful. Maybe your mom has a point. If this keeps up, it could start affecting us. I sighed, watching the city lights blur outside the window. I know, but what can I do? She's my mom. I can't just cut her off, can I? He didn't answer, and we spent the rest of the drive lost in our own thoughts. The week after that disastrous dinner, tension was building like a storm. My phone buzzed incessantly with texts from Mom, each one more insidious than the last. Just heard from Janice, from book club. She saw him with someone at the cafe. They seemed close, too close. Thought you should know. I stared at the screen, disbelief turning into frustration. It was ludicrous, but the seed was planted, and that's all she needed. I needed answers, face to face. When I walked into Mom's house later that day, the air was thick with the scent of her rose candles, an ironic attempt at peace. She was in the kitchen, humming a tune, pretending nothing was wrong. Mom, we need to talk. My voice was firm. She turned, her face a picture of practiced concern. What's wrong, dear? Don't play dumb. The messages about my husband. Why are you spreading lies? Her response was cool, detached. I'm just looking out for you, Mia. People talk. I thought you should know. And you believe them without asking me? Without proof? You're trying to stir up trouble. My pulse quickened with anger. Trouble? No, I'm saving you from it. Maybe you're too close to see what's really going on. Just then, Sophia walked in, catching the end of our argument. What's going on? Mom's been spreading rumors that my husband's cheating based on some cafe gossip. I explained, barely containing my frustration. Sophia looked between us torn. Mom, why would you do that? If there's nothing to it, no harm done, right? But if there is, wouldn't you want to know? Mom's voice was the epitome of evasion. By breaking up her marriage over rumors? Sophia's voice rose in rare defiance. Is that how we handle things now? Mom played her victim card. I'm being attacked here for caring, for loving my daughters enough to make sure they aren't being deceived. How is that wrong? I grabbed my phone, my resolve hardening. This isn't love, Mom. It's control, and I'm not standing for it anymore. Sophia and I left together. The divide Mom tried to create between us now a bridge. As we stepped outside, the cool evening air chilled our heated faces. I'm sorry, Mia, Sophia said quietly, for not seeing it sooner. For everything. It's not your fault. We're in this together now, right? I squeezed her hand, a simple gesture filled with unspoken promises. The family reunion was supposed to be a celebration, a festive gathering at our ancestral home. But as the sun dipped lower, the mood shifted, like the quiet before a storm. Mom had orchestrated the perfect scene. Flowers, fairy lights, but underneath things were far from perfect. She clinked her glass, calling for attention. Family is everything, she began. It's about supporting each other, making sacrifices, like Sophia, who's come out stronger after her divorce. She smiled at Sophia, who managed a weak nod, then turned her gaze to me. Her smile faded. And then there's Mia, so settled in her little world she can't see beyond it. The murmurs grew louder, judgmental. I could feel every eye on me, the scrutiny like pinpricks on my skin. Really, Mom? Is this necessary? I said, my voice steady. Despite the turmoil raging inside her, Mom ignored me and pressed on. Imagine a world where we all just thought about our own happiness, no care for how it affects others. Mia could learn a lot from Sophia's courage, don't you think? Mom, stop. That's enough. Sophia's voice cut through the air, sharper than I'd ever heard it. The crowd gasped, stunned. Mom looked caught off guard, her well-rehearsed script suddenly disrupted. Why are you doing this? Sophia continued, stepping closer to me, forming an unspoken barrier between us and Mom. Why can't you just be happy for Mia? She's not living her life at anyone's expense. She's been supporting me more than anyone. Mom quickly recovered, her voice cold and calculated. So you think undermining me changes the truth? Mia is selfish, and you, Sophia, are blinded by sisterly love. I'm not blind, Mom. I see perfectly well, Sophia shot back, her usual calm replaced by a fierce defiance. It's cruel to use a family gathering to air your biased grievances. The family around us began murmuring, tension palpable as people chose sides. Mom raised her hands in a gesture of supposed peace. You're both my daughters, and I love you. But sometimes love means telling hard truths. Mia, you need to think about more than just yourself and your perfect little marriage. I looked around at the faces in the room, seeing confusion and concern mirrored in their eyes. My heart pounded with a mix of anger and an overwhelming need to defend my peace. Hard truths? No, Mom, you're using your toxic assumptions and calling it love. This is manipulation, not concern, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I won't let you tear down my life because you're unhappy with the way I live it. Silence followed. It was heavy, charged, as everyone processed what had just happened. Sophia squeezed my hand, whispering, We'll handle this together. As conversations cautiously resumed around us, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about defending my choices anymore. It was about protecting my mental health and my marriage. A drastic change was necessary, and with Sophia by my side, I felt the strength to finally follow through. The days after the reunion were a whirlwind of whispered phone calls and quiet meetings between Sophia and me, united in our determination. We meticulously crafted a plan to reveal the truth about Mom's manipulations to the family. She always talks differently when she thinks no one else is listening. Sophia noted one evening as we sat with notes scattered across the table. Exactly, I replied, tapping my pen against my notebook. We need to catch her in the act. Show everyone the real Mom, the one we deal with behind closed doors. Sophia's eyes brightened as she scanned her laptop. What if we use a voice-activated recorder? We could hide it during your next one-on-one with her. I smiled. Perfect. She's invited me for tea on Saturday, thinking it's to mend fences. Little does she know. Saturday arrived, and with it, a knot of nerves in my stomach. The recorder was hidden in my purse, discreetly positioned to capture every word. Mom greeted me with her usual tight smile and ushered me into the kitchen. As we sat down with tea between us, she didn't waste any time. Mia, darling, I've been thinking about our little discussion at the reunion. I want to help you understand where I'm coming from. I nodded, my heart racing, knowing every word was being recorded. Go on. She continued, her tone laced with condescension. Sophia needs us now more than ever, and your stubborn independence could set a bad example. I'm only trying to look out for the family. And by looking out, you be trying to control my life, telling me how to be a wife. I kept my voice calm, steering her towards revealing more. It's not just about you, Mia. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the greater good. If that means adjusting your life, so be it. She leaned forward, her voice dripping with a fox sincerity that made my skin crawl. The conversation went on, Mom unknowingly laying bare her manipulative mindset, all caught on tape. The following week, we gathered the family again, this time under the guise of clearing the air. The tension in the living room was thick, everyone bracing for another showdown. But this time, Sophia and I were in control. Thank you all for coming, I began, standing with Sophia by my side. We believe it's important for everyone to see the full picture of what's been happening. I pressed play on the recorder and Mom's voice filled the room. Her cold words, her manipulation, the calculated way she tried to control my life, it was all laid bare. As the recording ended, the room erupted in murmurs of disbelief. Mom's face paled, her usual composure shattered. Is this true? You've been manipulating your daughters like this? Aunt Marie asked, her tone filled with disbelief. Mom stammered, her eyes darting to the shocked and disappointed faces around her. I was just trying to. No, Mom, you were caught, Sophia said, her voice unwavering. This is who you are, and it's why things need to change. As the family absorbed the revelation, their murmurs grew louder. One by one, they began sharing their own feelings, perspectives that had been suppressed for years. Sophia and I exchanged a glance. It was done. The truth had been revealed, not to punish, but to protect and heal. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. The bonds between us, once strained by manipulation, could now be rebuilt on a foundation of honesty and courage. As the echoes of the recording faded, the room felt charged, waiting for Mom to respond. She stood visibly shaken, her usual poise crumbling under the weight of her exposed actions. I did it for the family, she stammered, her voice thin and unsteady. To keep us together, to make us strong. Uncle John shook his head, his face etched with disbelief. That's not strength, that's control. Manipulating Mia and Sophia doesn't keep the family together. It tears it apart. Aunt Marie added, disappointment clear in her voice, you've always been the matriarch, yes, but this. We never imagined it went this far. Guiding your children is one thing. Controlling their lives is another. Mom's eyes darted around the room, seeking an ally, but found none. Even Sophia, her once staunch supporter, stood firmly by my side. Mom, we needed you to be our support, not our puppeteer, Sophia said, her voice steady and resolute. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of hushed conversations and quiet reassurances among family members. All except for Mom, who sat isolated, the weight of her actions settling heavily around her. In the weeks that followed, the family dynamic shifted dramatically. Invitations to Mom were polite but distant, and her once central role in family decisions faded. She was invited out of courtesy, not desire, her influence now reduced to mere formality. During this time, Sophia and I grew closer, rebuilding the relationship that Mom had almost destroyed. We spent hours sharing our thoughts, fears, and hopes for the future, laying the groundwork for a bond no longer defined by rivalry or manipulation. One evening, as my husband and I hosted a small dinner with Sophia, he raised his glass, a light smile on his face. To new beginnings and to family, the kind we build on trust and support, not manipulation. I'll drink to that, I said, clinking glasses with him, then with Sophia. We've been through a storm, but we're here, stronger and together. Sophia nodded, the candlelight reflecting in her eyes. It's strange how things turned out, but I'm grateful. We could have lost so much more if not for the truth. As the night wore on, we talked about healing, not just for ourselves, but for Mom too, if she ever sought it sincerely. For now, though, it was about us, about setting the foundation for a future where manipulation held no sway. The ordeal had not only mended my relationship with Sophia, but also strengthened my marriage. My husband and I understood each other better now, our commitment deepened by the challenges we had faced together. We had weathered the storm and emerged with a resilience and clarity that bound us even closer. Hey, I'm Sarah, a 28-year-old graphic designer with a passion for creativity and a baby on the way. Right now, I'm standing in my living room, surrounded by a sea of yellow and green decorations. My best friend, Emily, is up on a ladder, hanging the last of the welcome baby banners. Emily, you're a lifesaver, I call out, rubbing my very pregnant belly. I don't know how I have pulled off this gender-neutral baby shower without you. She grins down at me. That's what best friends are for, Mama. Plus, you know I love driving your mother-in-law crazy with all this yellow and green. I laugh, rolling my eyes. Oh God, don't remind me. Linda's been texting me nonstop about the baby's gender. If I get one more old wives' tale from her about how to tell if it's a boy or girl, I'm going to lose it. Right on cue, my phone buzzes. I glance at it and groan. Speak of the devil. Is it her again? Emily asks, climbing down the ladder. I nod, showing her the screen. Now she wants to know if I'm craving salty or sweet. Apparently, that's a foolproof way to tell. Emily rolls her eyes. That woman needs a new hobby. Tell me about it, I sigh, tossing my phone aside. Mark's trying to run interference, but you know how she is. As if on cue, my husband Mark walks in, looking a little frazzled. Hey babe, the nursery's all set up. My dad's bringing the last piece of furniture later. Thanks, hun. How's your mom doing with all this? I ask. He runs a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. Persistent as ever, but don't worry. I've told her 100 times we're keeping it a surprise. Good luck with that, Emily snorts, just as the doorbell rings. It's my parents, Robert and Carol, their arms loaded with gifts and snacks. Sweetie, the place looks fantastic. Robert beams, setting down the boxes. Your mother's right, you've done an amazing job. As we chat, Mark's phone rings. He glances at the screen and sighs. It's Mom again. I better take this. He steps outside, and through the door, I can hear him trying to calm Linda down. Emily sidles up to me smirking. $10 says she's trying to get him to spill the beans about the baby's gender. I shake my head. No bet. That's a sucker's game. As the day goes on and more friends and family arrive, the house buzzes with excitement. But I can't shake the nagging feeling that Linda's up to something. Every time Mark's phone rings, I tense up. Later that night, as Mark and I are getting ready for bed, I finally bring it up. Hun, is your mom okay? She seems extra intense about the whole gender thing. Mark sighs, pulling me close. You know how she is. She just wants to be involved. But don't worry, I've got it under control. I nod, trying to believe him, but as I drift off to sleep, I can't help but wonder what Linda might have up her sleeve for tomorrow. The morning of the baby shower arrives, and I wake up feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. As I'm getting ready, Mark walks in, looking anxious. Hey, you okay? I ask. You look like you've seen a ghost. He rubs his hand through his hair. Just got off the phone with my mom. She's acting weirder than usual. She kept talking about having a big surprise for us. I don't like the sound of that. I try to brush it off, but the unease lingers as the guests begin arriving. This spread looks amazing, my friend Rachel exclaims, eyeing the buffet. Thanks, Emily really outdid herself, I say, feeling proud. But just then, Emily rushes over, looking flustered. Sarah, we've got a problem. The cake decorator mixed up the order. The cake says it's a boy. What? No, this can't be happening. Don't worry, I've got a plan, Emily assures me. We'll just scrape off the boy part and replace it with baby. Crisis averted. As we're dealing with the cake disaster, the doorbell rings. Mark goes to answer it, and I hear his shocked voice from the hallway. Mom? What is all this? I turn to see Linda barging in, flanked by a small crowd of people I don't recognize. She's holding a bouquet of blue balloons, and there's a man in a white coat beside her. Surprise, darling, Linda announces, practically glowing. I've brought the party to you. What's going on, Linda? I ask, my voice shaking slightly. Well, since you two are being so stubborn about keeping the gender a secret, I decided to take matters into my own hands. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Dr. Thompson, sonogram expert extraordinaire. The man in the white coat gives an awkward wave. Mom, what are you doing? Mark hisses, mortified. I'm revealing the truth, dear, Linda declares proudly. It's a boy, and I have the proof. She pulls out a folder and waves it around for everyone to see. I have the latest sonogram pictures right here, Linda says triumphantly, holding up a folder. Dr. Thompson will examine them and confirm what I already know. I feel my face burning with a mix of anger and embarrassment. Linda, that's enough. This is our baby, our choice. You have no right. Oh, pish posh, Linda interrupts, waving her hand dismissively. I'm the grandmother. I have every right to know. Before I can respond, Emily steps in, trying to smooth things over. Hey everyone, why don't we move on to some fun baby shower games? I've got a great one where we guess the baby's birthday. But Linda isn't having it. She marches straight to Dr. Thompson and thrusts the folder into his hands. Go on, doctor. Tell them what you see. The poor man looks mortified. I'm not sure I should. Of course you should. Linda insists. I paid you good money for this. The room collectively gasps, and I see Mark's face turn pale. You did what? Linda realizes her slip up too late. Oh, fine. Yes, I paid him, she huffs, then adds, and I've been talking to your obstetrician too, Sarah, trying to get the truth out of her. But she wouldn't budge, even when I offered a very generous donation. My stomach churns. You tried to bribe my doctor. Linda, that's illegal. Chaos erupts. Mark is in a heated argument with his mother, voices overlapping. How could you do this, Mom? This is a complete violation of our privacy. I was just trying to help. You two are being ridiculous with all this secrecy. I can't take it anymore. I storm out of the room and lock myself in the nursery. Sitting there, surrounded by the soft yellows and greens we chose for our baby, I can still hear the argument outside. This was supposed to be a happy day, but now it's a complete nightmare. It's been 3 days since the baby shower disaster, and I'm still reeling. Sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, I feel numb. Mark walks in and sits beside me. How are you holding up, babe? Honestly, I feel like crap, I say, shaking my head. Your mom violated our privacy, tried to bribe my doctor, and ruined what was supposed to be a special day. Mark sighs, running his hands through his hair. I know, I'm so sorry. I've been trying to talk to her, but she's just not listening. Before I can respond, my phone buzzes. It's Emily. I pick it up. Hey, Em, what's up? Sarah, you're not going to believe this. Remember Dr. Thompson from the shower? I did some digging. He's not a doctor at all. He's an actor Linda hired. I nearly dropped my phone. Are you serious? How did you find out? I recognized him from a local theater production. I called the theater and they confirmed it. His real name is Steve Daniels. I relay the information to Mark, and I can see his face turn red with anger. That's it, he says, standing up. I'm calling my mom right now. He puts the phone on speaker, and when Linda answers, she sounds cheery. Hello, dear. Have you finally come to your senses about the gender reveal? Mark's voice is ice cold. Cut the crap, Mom. We know about the fake doctor. How could you do this? There's a pause before Linda responds, her voice defiant. I did what I had to do. You two were being absurd with all this secrecy. I can't hold back anymore. Linda, he had no right. You violated our privacy and possibly broke the law. Oh, please, she scoffs. I'm the grandmother. I have every right to know about my grandchild. Mark's jaw tightens. No, Mom, you don't. And until you can understand that and apologize, we're going to need some space. He hangs up, leaving a heavy silence in the kitchen. I feel emotionally drained. I need to file a complaint with the hospital, I say. If she tried to bribe my doctor, who knows what information she might have gotten? Mark nods. I'll go with you. We need to get to the bottom of this. The next day, we sit in the office of the hospital administrator. The woman across from us looks grave. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I want to assure you that we take patient privacy very seriously. We will conduct a full investigation into this matter. As we leave, Mark's phone rings. It's his dad, George. Son, we need to talk. Can you and Sarah come over? When we arrive at Mark's childhood home, George looks tired and upset. I'm so sorry, both of you, he says, leading us to his study. There's something I need to show you. He pulls out a box filled with papers. Your mother? This isn't the first time she's done something like this. I've been keeping track over the years. She's always had trouble respecting boundaries, especially when it comes to family. Mark looks stunned. Dad, why didn't you ever say anything? George sighs heavily. I thought I could manage her behavior, but after what happened at the shower, I realize I've been enabling her. It's time for this to stop. He hands us the box. Inside are letters, emails, and even legal documents detailing Linda's past manipulations. There was an incident with your cousin Jenny's wedding, George explains. Linda tried to change the venue without telling anyone because she didn't like the original choice. And when your brother Tom was applying to colleges, Linda submitted applications in Tom's name to schools he didn't even want to attend. I feel a mix of vindication and sadness wash over me. George, thank you for showing us this. It helps to know we're not alone in dealing with her behavior. Mark puts his arm around me, his voice steady with resolve. We're going to get through this, Sarah, together. And we're going to make sure our baby is protected from this kind of manipulation. After reviewing the evidence George provided, Mark and I sit in our living room, discussing our next move. I can't believe it's come to this, but I know what needs to be done. I think we need to take legal action. Mark nods, determination etched on his face. You're right, we need to protect our family. I'll call a lawyer first thing tomorrow. The following day, we're sitting in Attorney Johnson's office. After listening to our story, she leans forward, her tone serious. Based on what you've told me, we have grounds for a restraining order, and possibly charges for invasion of privacy and harassment. What about the hospital? I ask, shouldn't they be held accountable too? We'll start with the restraining order against Linda. Johnson advises. We'll address the hospital situation separately. A week later, we receive a call from the hospital administrator. Mrs. Johnson, we've completed our investigation. I'm deeply sorry to inform you that one of our nurses, under pressure from your mother-in-law, did leak some of your confidential information. I feel my anger rising. What's being done about this? I ask, struggling to stay calm. The nurse has been terminated and we're implementing stricter privacy protocols. We'd also like to issue a formal apology and discuss compensation for this breach. After hanging up, I turn to Mark. Well, at least they're taking it seriously. Small consolation, he mutters. But it's something. Weeks pass, and finally, we find ourselves in court. Linda sits at the defendant's table, her expression defiant. The judge enters, and the proceedings begin. Our lawyer presents the evidence. Linda's hiring of a fake sonogram expert, her attempted bribery, the leaked medical information, and George's documentation of her past manipulative behaviors. Linda's lawyer tries to paint her actions as those of a concerned grandmother who went too far, but the judge isn't swayed. Mrs. Linda Johnson, this court finds you guilty of harassment and invasion of privacy, the judge declares. You are hereby fined $10,000 and ordered to attend mandatory therapy sessions to address your controlling behavior. I squeeze Mark's hand as the judge continues. Furthermore, a restraining order is granted. You are to have no contact with Sarah and Mark Johnson unless they initiate it. As we leave the courthouse, Mark turns to me, his eyes filled with remorse. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up to her years ago. From now on, our family comes first. Always. I take his hand, feeling the strength of our bond. We're in this together, Mark. We'll get through it. Months pass, and the big day finally arrives. I'm in the delivery room, Mark by my side, when our beautiful baby boy enters the world. As I hold him for the first time, all the struggles and heartache fade away. He's perfect, Sarah, Mark whispers, awe in his voice. Absolutely perfect. George beams as he cradles his grandson. He's got your eyes, Sarah, he says proudly, and Mark's nose. Emily adds with a laugh, he's a perfect blend of you both. As our friends and family celebrate with us, I look at Mark and our son, feeling a deep sense of peace and strength. We've been through so much, but we've come out stronger, ready to protect our little family from any toxic influences. Now, I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you ever consider forgiving Linda and allowing her back into your child's life? Or do you think some actions are truly unforgivable when it comes to protecting your family? Hi, I'm Linda, I say, taking a sip of coffee, a 40-year-old self-made woman. Growing up, I always knew I wasn't the favorite in the family. My younger brother John was the star in my parents' eyes from the start. They doted on him, gave him everything he wanted, while I felt more like a guest in our home than their daughter. I glance at Maggie, my best friend, who sits across from me at the kitchen table. I remember one Christmas, John got the latest gaming console and I got a sweater. I laughed bitterly. It was like they didn't even see me. Maggie frowns, her voice soft. That's so unfair, Linda. It must have been hard, feeling invisible. It was, I say, my eyes drifting to the quiet street outside. That's why I left as soon as I turned 18. I knew I had to build something for myself. And I did. I smile, remembering the years of hard work. Every paycheck, every promotion, I saved and climbed my way up. This house, I gesture around, it's modest, but it's mine. It's proof I can stand on my own. Meanwhile, John's life couldn't be more different. Despite all the coddling, he dropped out of college, drifted from one failed venture to another. Now, jobless and with children from different partners, he's moved back in with our parents, relying on their constant bailouts. Maggie shakes her head, a mix of sympathy and frustration on her face. Let me guess, they're still making excuses for him. Exactly, I sigh, the familiar bitterness rising in my chest. It's always about how John needs more help, more chances. They never stop to think that maybe it's their endless rescuing that's kept him from growing up. Our conversation is interrupted by the ringing of my phone. I glance at the screen. It's Mom. I brace myself before answering, already knowing what this call is about. Linda, we need to talk about John. Mom begins, her voice tense. He's gotten himself into trouble with child support. He owes over $3,000, and if he doesn't pay, he could go to jail. And you're calling me because I ask, though I already know the answer. We need your help, Linda, she pleads. We've done everything we can, but we're out of options. I feel that old pang of resentment. So you want money. It's not just money, Mom counters, desperation creeping into her voice. It's your brother's freedom. I take a deep breath, the weight of years of being second best pressing down on me. Mom, I've worked hard for everything I have. John has never had to struggle because you've always cleaned up his messes. There's a heavy pause, thick with unspoken accusations and disappointments. Are you really going to let your brother go to jail? Mom asks, her voice a mix of guilt-tripping and hope. I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't. I won't. My decision is clear, my voice firm. John needs to face the consequences of his actions. I have my own life, my own responsibilities. The call ends with a strained goodbye, leaving me with a swirl of emotions, anger, relief, and most of all, a sense of peace for finally standing my ground. Maggie reaches over, squeezing my hand in silent support. You did the right thing, Linda, she says. It's time they realize you're not their emergency fund. I nod, grateful for her understanding. It's just hard, you know. I know, she replies, her smile warm and reassuring. But you're doing what's best for you, and that's what matters. Not long after the phone call, there's a knock at my door. When I open it, I'm met with the tense faces of my parents. I let them in, knowing this isn't going to be a casual visit. Linda, we wouldn't ask if it weren't serious. Dad begins, his tone grave. John could go to jail. I cross my arms and lean against the wall. And how is that my problem, Dad? Why is it always me who has to fix things? You're his sister, Mom cuts in sharply. Family helps family. I let out a bitter laugh. Family helps family? That's rich coming from you. Where was that help when I needed support? Mom's eyes narrow. We did everything we could for you. Really? I challenge, my voice rising. Because all I remember is being sidelined the moment John was born. The air thickens with old grievances as Dad tries to mediate. Let's not rehash the past. We're talking about now. John needs help. And what about what I need? I counter, my frustration growing. I've been saving that money to pay off my house for my future, something I've built on my own. Dad's voice softens. We know you've worked hard, Linda. We're proud of you, but your brother. Stop, I interrupt, anger surging. It's always about John. What about me? Don't I deserve to feel secure in my own life? You're being selfish, Mom accuses, and the sting of her words cuts deeper than I expected. After all we've done for you. All you've done? I snap. You mean ignoring me unless it was convenient? You've never once considered what I might need. The conversation escalates quickly, voices rising, emotions raw. You want me to bail him out? Just hand over the money I've worked years for. No, I won't do it. We're still your family, Linda, Dad says, disappointment etched in his face. How can you turn your back on us? I stare at them, my heart pounding. How many times did you turn your back on me when I needed you? Where were you? Mom's eyes fill with tears. We came here hoping you'd understand the gravity of the situation. John is your brother. And I am your daughter, I reply sharply. But that never seemed to matter much unless it was convenient for you, I added, my voice heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. A painful silence followed, thick with the tension of everything that had gone unsaid for years. Finally, Dad broke the quiet, his voice low and measured. So you won't help? I can't. I won't, I reply, standing firm. I have my own life to think about. It's time John learns to deal with his own problems. Mom's eyes flash with a mix of disbelief and anger. You'll regret this, Linda. You're choosing money over your own family. It's not about the money. It's about respect. Something I've never really gotten from you. This is where I draw the line. After my parents left, the house felt eerily silent, like the calm after a storm. But I knew this quiet wouldn't last. The real tempest, the gossip, the family opinions was still brewing. It didn't take long for the news of our confrontation to ripple through the family. Calls and messages started flooding in, each one reminding me of the divide my decision had caused. Some relatives were quick to criticize, echoing my parents' disappointment. How could you refuse to help your own brother? One aunt scolded over the phone. her words sharp and laced with judgment, meant to guilt me into reconsidering. But amid the disapproval, there were also voices of support. Maggie, ever steadfast, rallied our circle of friends. "You did what was right for you, Linda. Don't let anyone make you doubt that," she reassured me during one of our late-night chats. Then there was my cousin Lucas, a distant relative who had always seemed to understand the family dynamics better than most. One evening, I received a text from him. "I heard what happened. It's about time someone stood up to them." His support was unexpected, but welcome. A reminder that I wasn't alone in recognizing the toxic patterns that had plagued our family for years. As the days turned into weeks, the initial barrage of calls and messages began to wane, but the tension within the family lingered. I attended a family gathering knowing well the kind of reception I might face. Walking into the room felt like stepping onto a battlefield. Eyes tracked my every move, and whispers barely concealed themselves throughout the event. Lucas stayed by my side, his presence a quiet pillar of strength. "You're handling this better than most would," he mentioned as we stood off to the side, away from the crowd. "I have to," I replied, "for my own peace." In the weeks following the family gathering, I focused on building a healthier, more balanced life. I knew that maintaining the boundaries I had set with my family would be crucial, not just for my peace of mind, but for my own growth. I started therapy, a decision sparked by the resurfacing feelings of guilt and abandonment after the confrontation with my parents. Sitting in a therapist's office, I opened up about my childhood, the favoritism, the neglect, and how it had shaped my relationships. "It sounds like you've always been the responsible one, the one who had to take care of herself," my therapist noted, her voice gentle but probing. "That's exactly it," I said, the realization dawning on me. And when I finally said no, it felt like I was breaking some unspoken family rule. "We often internalize these roles," she explained, "but breaking free from them can lead to significant personal growth." Her words were empowering, helping me understand that my worth wasn't tied to how much I sacrificed for others, especially when those sacrifices were never reciprocated. Meanwhile, John's situation worsened. Without my financial help, my parents, desperate to protect him from the consequences of their lifelong enabling, scrambled for alternatives. They tried setting up fundraisers, reached out to distant relatives, and even considered taking out loans. I heard about their struggles through Lucas, who kept in touch regularly. "They're really doing everything they can to avoid letting John face the real consequences," he said during one of our calls. One afternoon, I met Maggie for lunch at a cozy cafe, a small haven from the bustling city. We talked about everything from work to personal growth. But inevitably, the conversation turned back to my family. "You seem different, Jess," Maggie observed, her eyes thoughtful. "More at peace." "Maybe," I smiled, feeling the truth of her words. "I am. It's been tough, but setting these boundaries has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. I'm finally prioritizing myself." "That's wonderful to hear," Maggie said, her smile wide and genuine. "You deserve this peace, Jess. You've earned it." Months have passed since I firmly established boundaries with my family, and life has gradually settled into a new, healthier rhythm. I took a significant step towards securing my future by legally documenting my decision not to be financially responsible for my parents or John. This wasn't just about protecting my assets, it was a statement of independence and a commitment to prioritizing my own well-being. Despite these safeguards, news of John's ongoing struggles and my parents' worsening financial and health issues still made its way to me, mostly through Lucas, who remained my connection to the family dynamics without pulling me back into old, unhealthy patterns. One evening, I hosted a small gathering at my home. The room was filled with warmth and laughter, a stark contrast to the family gatherings I used to dread. Surrounded by the friends and allies who had supported me through my hardest moments, I felt immense gratitude. Maggie, ever the supportive friend, raised her glass during a toast. "To Linda, for showing us the strength it takes to choose oneself, even when it's hard." The room echoed with cheers, and I felt a surge of pride. These people, my chosen family, understood my journey, respected my decisions, and celebrated my victories as their own. They had been there through the setbacks and challenges, offering comfort and solidarity. As the evening wound down, I found myself at my favorite spot by the window, gazing out at the city lights. The peaceful night offered the perfect backdrop for reflection. I thought about the boundaries I had set and the sense of peace they had brought into my life. It's true what they say, sometimes the hardest boundaries to establish are the ones that ultimately set us free. This realization wasn't an ending, but a beginning, a new chapter in which I could live authentically and unapologetically, prioritizing my well-being and happiness. My relationship with my family might remain strained, but I had found a way to thrive outside the constraints of those old dynamics. As I turned from the window, I felt a quiet triumph swell in my heart. This wasn't just my new normal. It was a hard-earned victory, a testament to the resilience and determination that had guided me through the darkest times. The story of Linda comes to a close, one of overcoming and setting boundaries that we hope resonates with many of you. Now we'd love to hear from you. Do you believe family obligations should always take precedence over personal well-being? Or is it sometimes necessary to put yourself first in order to truly help others? It's a deeply personal and often controversial topic, so please feel free to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.